hear that, guys? Gone with the...
Whoa! You see that power flash right there?
In a year already defined by record-breaking storms, Hurricane Melissa has emerged as the most catastrophic threat the Caribbean has seen in decades. What began as a distant tropical disturbance has exploded into a monstrous Category 5 hurricane, packing sustained winds of 160 miles per hour, a storm surge between 12 and 18 feet, and rainfall totals reaching a staggering 30 to 40 inches across Jamaica's mountainous terrain. For millions along the southeastern coast, the next 24 hours may decide the fate of their homes, their communities, and their very lives. Major airports are shut down, store shelves stand bare, and highways have vanished beneath rising waters. Rescue teams are stretched to the limit as flash floods, landslides, and blackouts sweep across the island. Meteorologists warn that this could be a worst-case scenario, a hurricane powerful enough to reshape coastlines, destroy infrastructure, and leave tens of thousands without power for weeks. Live from Montego Bay, Jamaica, when Hurricane Melissa finally made landfall just before sunrise, the island was already under siege. Winds howled over 150 miles per hour, ripping rooftops apart, snapping power poles like twigs, and hurling debris through flooded streets. By 7:30 a.m., more than 320,000 residents were in the dark, and emergency crews were forced to withdraw as roads disappeared beneath torrents of water. Entire coastal neighborhoods watched in horror as a towering storm surge swallowed vehicles, flooded first floors, and carried fishing boats deep into residential areas. In Kingston, sirens wailed through blacked-out streets as families huddled in bathrooms, clutching flashlights and blankets. Grocery stores that had emptied the night before were now submerged in chest-deep water. Firefighters struggled through fallen trees and landslides to reach the trapped, while the Blue Mountains turned into raging rivers as 30 to 40 inches of rain carved deep gashes into the earth. Coffee farms and hillside villages were completely cut off, and helicopters couldn't fly in near-zero visibility. By mid-morning, meteorologists' worst fears were confirmed. The storm was slowing down. That meant the nightmare had only just begun. As Hurricane Melissa's eye wall crawled inland, Jamaica plunged into a night of chaos few will ever forget. Winds screamed like jet engines, tearing metal roofs from homes and sending shards of tin slicing through the air. Families crouched behind mattresses as glass shattered and walls trembled. Across the coast, more than 2,800 emergency calls poured in, but rescuers could respond to only a fraction. In low-lying neighborhoods, floodwaters climbed 5 to 8 feet high, forcing people to flee to countertops, attics, and rooftops. In St. Thomas Parish, a low rumble shook the ground moments before an entire hillside collapsed, burying homes beneath tons of mud. One survivor said it sounded like the earth itself was breaking apart. Rescue crews tried to reach the area, but washed-out bridges forced them to trek through knee-deep sludge. In Kingston, terrified parents held their children as transformers exploded in blinding flashes. Districts fell silent, swallowed by darkness. Hospitals overflowed, running on dwindling generator fuel, while helicopters remained grounded once winds exceeded 120 miles per hour. For many, those hours felt endless. Meteorologists warned that Hurricane Melissa was a textbook example of how quickly the world's oceans are changing. Fueled by sea temperatures near 88 degrees, the storm leapt from Category 2 to Category 5 in less than 30 hours, a phenomenon known as rapid intensification. Warm water acts like fuel, and when there's little wind shear, it supercharges storms far beyond historical limits. As Melissa crawled over Jamaica's interior, its rain bands poured moisture like a fire hose. The Blue Mountains squeezed out rainfall of 30 to 40 inches, triggering landslides and flash floods within minutes. Scientists warned that such slow-moving hurricanes are becoming more common, amplifying destruction and overwhelming drainage systems. Meanwhile, Melissa's eye wall maintained over 100-meter winds, generating a devastating storm surge that pushed seawater miles inland. Waves of 12 to 18 feet destroyed seawalls and contaminated freshwater wells. Communities reported salt water seeping into drinking water, forcing shelters to ration bottled supplies. Experts at the National Hurricane Center stress that rising sea levels and warmer oceans are transforming the Atlantic hurricane landscape. Storms like Melissa, once-in-a-century events, may soon become the new normal. As floodwaters swallowed entire neighborhoods, the human toll became impossible to ignore. Families trapped on balconies waved flashlights toward rescuers. Children clung to soaked blankets as parents whispered calm reassurances. In some homes, the water rose so quickly that residents had barely 5 minutes to escape before their living rooms filled with 6 feet of floodwater. Firefighters in massive trucks navigated submerged streets, while police formed human chains to save the elderly. Over 220 volunteers from churches and community centers set up makeshift shelters, handing out food, dry clothes, and flashlights to over 9,000 evacuees. In Kingston, paramedics faced overwhelming demand as injuries surged. Hospital corridors turned into makeshift wards, and generators strained to keep critical equipment running. Doctors warned that if fuel couldn't reach them soon, lives would be at risk. Beyond the city, rural towns were cut off completely. Washed-out bridges left them isolated with no food, medicine, or clean water. Radio operators broadcast desperate pleas for baby formula and insulin. Fishermen braved raging currents in small boats to deliver supplies. The storm tested not just infrastructure, but courage itself. As Hurricane Melissa pushed deeper into Jamaica, the nation's emergency response shifted into overdrive. Over 2,400 troops were deployed with high-water vehicles, helicopters, and patrol boats. Crews worked non-stop to clear debris and deliver medicine, food, and fuel to devastated neighborhoods. The Emergency Operations Center in Kingston coordinated with partners in the U.S. and Canada to airlift 80 tons of aid, water filters, medical kits, and satellite gear. Stranded tourists were escorted to shelters as embassy staff issued passports by flashlight in flickering buildings. Still, the challenges kept coming. Bridges were gone, highways impassable, telecom towers toppled, and 100,000 residents left without service. Radio became the island's heartbeat. Yet even in darkness, hope endured. Communities organized donation drives, youth groups handed out hygiene kits, and fishermen navigated canals to deliver bottled water. In churches, strangers embraced like family. Resilience wasn't made of steel. It was made of people. When the winds finally eased and the rain thinned to a drizzle, Jamaica emerged into a scarred landscape. Sunrise revealed neighborhoods buried in mud, highways split apart, and fishing boats stacked on rooftops. Over 42 bridges were impassable, 57 roads destroyed, and hospitals overwhelmed. For thousands, the storm's end marked the beginning of a new struggle. Climate experts called Melissa a warning. The planet is changing faster than infrastructure can adapt. Seawalls that once protected coastlines were crushed in minutes. Drainage systems designed decades ago failed under historic rainfall. The Caribbean isn't alone. Similar trends have hit Louisiana, Texas, and Florida. Yet, amid the ruin, stories of strength shone through. Families shared generators, strangers exchanged bottled water, and radio hosts checked in with isolated communities. Crews worked hand-in-hand with volunteers to restore power, one block at a time. As Jamaica takes its first fragile steps toward recovery, the echoes of Hurricane Melissa linger in every shattered home and flooded street. The waters will recede, power will return, and highways will reopen. But the scars, both physical and emotional, will remain. This disaster is a wake-up call. Hurricanes are growing stronger, rainfall heavier, coastlines more vulnerable. Preparation can no longer wait for the next storm. Tonight, somewhere in a darkened shelter, a father soothes his frightened child. A volunteer offers clean water to a stranger. Rescue teams press forward searching for survivors. These are the moments that define a nation's strength. Not the size of the storm, but how its people rise together in its aftermath. Stay informed, stay prepared, and remember, nature doesn't wait. Neither should we.